Yeah, let's go. We came a long way, that's what the song say. And I could do all things, I could do all things. Yeah, I could do all things, yeah. We came a long way, that's what the song say. And I could do all things.
What is website accessibility? A lot of people hear that word just thrown out there, accessibility, and you think about the people in their wheelchairs, you think about people on crutches, and those coveted parking spots. But what does it really mean in the digital space? So let's go ahead and break that down.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, just the same way that a restaurant would have a ramp to accommodate that person in a wheelchair, web accessibility is about making those accommodations for people with disabilities in the digital space. So there are a few major challenges that many people in the disabilities community face when they're trying to interact with content online. And I'll give you an example. One of the examples is keyboard navigation. So someone with a severe physical disability might not be using a mouse. They're going to be using their keyboard. And the universal key that they're going to be using to navigate through a site is the tab button. So sometimes you may have done this in the past, Edward, too, is like, you try to tab through a form and you just use the tab button to get through. Now that's all fine and good, but oftentimes if a website is not accessible or hasn't made the adjustments towards accessibility, what'll happen is they'll press on that tab key and they'll skip over the entire menu. They'll try to get to the shopping cart. It's impossible. They might fill out a job application and then hit enter and nothing happens. So that makes it completely inaccessible to them, and they are not able to do some of the more important things in their lives. Like I said, maybe a job application, maybe setting up a vaccine appointment, a doctor's appointment, things that are critical to their daily lives. And so we need to start making those adjustments in the digital space to accommodate people with disabilities there as well.
Wow, that's super important. We were chatting actually before we started the stream, and we were just relating to the fact that as we get older, our body changes, and so accessibility isn't just for people that are born with this. Am I correct, Ari?
Totally. It's a really good point. I find that there's a saying that really good accessibility is good for everyone. And what I mean by that is if we go back to that ramp reference, if you look at that ramp outside that restaurant, the people that are using it are not just people with disabilities or on crutches or even in wheelchairs. There might be a mother pushing her stroller. There might be a man with his bike. There might be an elderly person that would rather go up a ramp because it's safer for him. So the same thing goes for digital accessibility. Some of the adjustments that we make are, for example, I wear reading glasses. I'm not a young guy, so I have to wear these reading glasses. And so I come across a website that may have very small font, or the contrast doesn't really work for me and I can't read very well. So I can use this tool to increase the size of all the fonts, to increase the size of the entire website, to change the font to something that's more readable, to change the contrast. All these things give me the ability as a person who just has, difficulty reading a small font to make those adjustments on the fly. So it really increases the access, not just to people in the disabilities community, but to everyone.
Yeah, as you're going through this, I'm thinking about just in my life and my family. So, my relatives are getting older. Vision is not what it used to be. And then also in terms of just inner circle in general, I mean, even young people, there's people that have been in car accidents and they have limited mobility in their hands. My wife personally, she's a physical therapist, so she deals with like trauma, injuries, whether it's sports related or whether it is environmental injury. So there's so many different things out there that can impact a person's mobility, and it's out there. So in terms of websites in general, so a lot of people are going to say, okay, so great presentation, guys. Is my website isn't it accessible by default? If I can see the website on the computer or on my phone, isn't that how it comes by default?
Exactly. Yeah, that's a really good point. So a lot of people think, look, accessibility digitally is kind of like innate, right? You just kind of go to the website. Anyone can go to a website, and it should be okay. But like we talked about, for example, from a keyboard navigation standpoint, if you're not making those adjustments, then it's completely inaccessible to someone with a disability. Now, let's talk about another kind of inaccessibility. People who have very low vision or who are blind. They're going to rely on their screen reader to tell them what is in front of them. So again, if we're not making those adjustments for that
Wait.
population.
What's it? But hold up. I don't even think I've seen a screen reader in my life. Could you tell us what a screen reader is?
Absolutely. So someone who is blind is going to be using a technology called a screen reader, and essentially what is going to go through the entire site and it is going to audibly describe what is in front of them. So in order for it to work properly, there needs to be descriptions there. So I'll give you an example. Usually websites have a lot of images. And to code those images, you're going to need what's called alt tags, basically image descriptions. But the majority of website owners and developers don't include alt tags because they're expensive to produce, because there's so many images, and usually images are dynamic and being changed and uploaded and taken down, all of these things. So as a result, when you have an AI technology like Access Widget that can create alt tags on the fly, that allows the screen reader to pick up that description that's been created and then give the user that is blind a real context of what is in front of them. Again, that's making a huge shift from inaccessible to accessible for that particular user.
So are these like physical devices? Are they apps? These screen readers?
So those are actually, you can download them. Most of them are for the major ones are free. There is one that's called JAWS, that is a paid one, and it's basically a software that is there for people in the disabilities community, specifically those who are blind. And yes, they're used across that entire community. So it's really important for technology and software to work in conjunction with those assistive technologies to give that user the best possible experience.
Wow. So it's on. I can see this working for mobile device and desktop, Mac or PC, and that sort of thing. That's
100%.
great information.
And one other thing to note, as we were talking about sort of like the population of people in the disabilities community, if some people don't realize that when you accumulate all of the disabilities communities, right, cognitive disabilities, motor disabilities, visual disabilities, we're talking about something in the neighborhood of 20 to 25% of the population. So almost 1 in 4 Americans have a disability that inhibits them in some
You tell me
capacity.
1 in 4 Americans, like,
Yes.
it's like 3 of them are going to have issues. It could even be me.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, people, for example, who are colorblind, they're going to have issues navigating certain sites. People who have cognitive disabilities, ADHD, that they might have certain issues focusing and understanding certain parts of certain sites. So when you really start to kind of widen your scope and start to think of all the different disabilities communities and accumulate them all together, this is a very significant part of the population. And so the idea of web accessibility then becomes a pragmatic issue of, hey, if I'm going to be spending all this money designing my website, driving traffic to my website, I want to make sure that everybody that goes there can access my content. And also, that includes the disabilities community as well.
I want to know your thoughts, your comments. Put them in the comments below. If you have the opportunity, do that thing, smash that like button. All right, guys, I'll see you all next video.
Yeah, we came a long way. That's what the song say. And I can do all things.